Hello everybody, my name is Dave Jackson, he, him, and this is Tales from the Backlog, where each week I'm joined by a guest to deep dive a game from our backlogs. Today's game is Asura's Wrath. But before we get into that, a few quick things. If this is your first time here, here's how spoilers work. First and foremost, we're not going to spoil the story of Asura's Wrath for a while, and we'll try to dance around some of the more hype moments that you might want to experience for yourself for the first time. There will be a timestamp down in the show notes for when spoilers begin. And if you like the show, please consider supporting however you can. Patreon.com/RealDaveJackson is the place to give me money if you choose to do so. But you can also do things like telling a friend, leaving a review, reposting on socials, sharing in Discord servers and things that you're in. It's all very helpful. But I am not here alone today. I'm joined by two wonderful returning friends of the show, Nick, he, him, and Will, he, him. They are the hosts of Friday Night Gamecast, and they're both biomechanical demigods. Will and Nick, welcome back.
Hey, very, very glad to be on. Thank you very much for having us talk about this epic game.
Yeah.
Always a good time.
Dave, it's been too long since we've been on the show. I am really excited to be back here, and I miss you. And this is one of those that I am incredibly excited to dig into. The same thing as Will, so I can't wait.
Yeah, it's always great chatting with you guys. I made a list of the episodes that we did in the past, and we've always done good episodes together. We did Prey 2017, we did Redfall, and we did Control most recently. So a lot of bangers on there. We've had lots of chats on Friday Night Gamecast as well. So it's always good to talk with the both of you. And we have a real interesting game to talk about today. I was telling you guys before recording, when I think Asura's Wrath, I think a lot of things, but one of the first things I think of is our friend Will here, who's always just shouting from the rooftops, pleading for that remaster. So I'm glad you guys are here for this one especially.
Look, it's going to happen eventually. Probably never, but eventually.
Eventually, yeah. I think eventually never counts within eventually sometime,
exactly.
Right?
Monkeys and typewriters, man. Monkeys and typewriters.
Yeah, for sure. So Asura's Wrath, it's an action game developed by CyberConnect 2 and published by Capcom for Xbox 360 and PS3 in 2012. Asura's Wrath was directed by Hiroshi Matsuyama, and the project lead was Seiji Shimoda. And we'll have some more credits as we go through the rest of the episode. But first, if you don't know what the game is, we have our quick pitches. And I have the first pitch. I say, local headline, man too angry to die, fights gods. What would you guys say?
Yeah, less concise, but I would say that what would you do if Naruto Ninja Storm, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and God Hand had a baby, and then that baby sprouted 6 arms to punch a meteor? What would you do?
I don't know what I would do. That is a wild hypothetical you've set up there.
I pull out my phone.
Yeah, pull out your phone. Yeah.
Yep. And mine, I just have 2 alternate titles for the game. So it could be Asura's Wrath, Hydrogen Bomb versus 7 coughing babies.
Uh-huh.
Or it could be Asura's Wrath. It's Scott Pilgrim, but somehow more anime.
Yes. 100%. If this game is anything, it's anime. That's for sure. I played this on the Xbox 360. I went out and bought a copy and played it on my 360. It took me 8 hours to beat. How about you guys?
I originally played it on the 360 back in the day, like around the time it first came out. I don't think it was 2012, maybe it was 2013 or so. But I played it there. I can't recall the hours it took me to beat it, but I'm pretty sure if I did beat it, I either barely beat it, and we'll talk about the ending and how that all kind of gets timey-wimey.
Yeah.
But more recently, I played through it last year when we were talking about it a couple of different times. And that took me about 10 to 11 hours because I was trying to push for some of those extra, like rank up on S and play it on hard. So I was kind of going out of my way for a couple of items.
Right.
Yeah, same here. We definitely did a show on it for our Patreon Did You Hate It little sub show for our supporters over there, and not a plug, but we did do that, and I would say it was around 10 or 11 hours. Same thing as Will. I was just trying to get those S ranks so I could get that, that extra perk.
Yeah, I hit the watch it on YouTube button for those extra scenes and things like that. So Yeah, well, let's get started with our kind of histories with this, and the pitch for this is actually like this is like a playable anime, so you get to like kind of take part in the big hype moments in a martial arts fight centered anime. So I had never heard of this until I started like doing this show and hanging out with more and more people who, play a lot of games and talk about them and have different experiences than like me and my high school friends, basically. So I never heard about this basically until I started seeing Wario64 posts Asura's Wrath is on sale on Xbox Live or whatever. And there's a bunch of people every time that are like, please give me a remaster, like bring this game to PC, stuff like that. So that's my history real quick. Will, you said you were there, like maybe not right when it released, but really quickly. So like, what was it that brought you to it?
I was pretty close to there. This is back in the day where they would regularly have demos for games that you could download. Yeah. So we were in that fun, like in between time, if you're old gamers like the three of us on here, then you remember the before times where you'd buy a Xbox magazine and get a disc in there, or PlayStation magazine and get a disc. But there was also the in between times where companies were somehow really nice and would just randomly put demos for the majority of their games so you can play like the first 10 or 15 minutes before it came out, just to wet your whistle a little bit before they realize they can just get you for all your money without playing it beforehand. So my first time actually playing Asura's Wrath was through one of those demos, and I was playing through it and I was going, and it's one of those initial feelings. I feel like a lot of people will feel it when you're playing through it. You're like, this feels weird. It's almost like a kind of God of War, but not really. It doesn't flow as well. I wasn't familiar at this point with the Naruto Ninja Storm games because I just didn't necessarily get into that kind of group of games. But once you get to a certain point, which we're going to talk about very shortly because it happens very quickly at the beginning of the game, where you start really getting those epic moments. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to buy this game immediately.
Yeah.
Just because of like the over-the-top nature, which really sold me on that demo. So yeah, went through, bought it pretty close to the beginning, and just had a blast with it.
And Will, so like this, the other part of like, I think why you might want to play this is like if you're really into anime.
For sure.
So are you?
Oh, incredibly. Yep. So, okay. That was a huge draw for me as well. Where's the anime, I'm not saying expression, but like, the influences on its sleeve, like openly. You get plenty of those great impact frames, lots of people getting punched in the jaw and, sitting there, like holding the fist against their jaw. Anything you can think of anime trope wise, it happens. We even talk about the good stuff too, with like the bumpers in between episodes, which is just so sweet. It's so sweet the first time that happens when you get like a nice little cliffhanger and you get like a Asura's Wrath.
Yeah.
Asura's Wrath. You get that kind of brotherhood back and forth. So
then the next thing pops up that says previously on Asura's Wrath. And it takes you through that stuff. I didn't even know that this game was like that. I didn't know that that was the structure of this, that it was like a sequence of like basically playable anime episodes. I just knew that at one point, like someone throws the moon at someone else and that it was an action game. That's all I knew about this, really. Both of those are true, by the way. So, Nick, how about you? Was it basically Will's evangelizing that brought you in? And are you an anime fan?
Yeah, 100% Will's influence just seeping into my gaming taste. 100% since we started the show, of course, but then overall, I had seen Asura's Wrath. Of course, as a kid, you're walking around the GameStop and you're looking at the games on the walls. I was, at that age, a little bit more interested into the Gears of War, the Mass Effect, the more mainstream, AAA, third-person action-adventure games, as opposed to kind of, spending that $60 bump on this crazy, weird, interesting-looking anime title. But it's like one of those box cover arts that you never forget. Like you've seen that before and that you've seen it as soon as you pick it up or you notice it on the Xbox storefront, whatever the case may be. And so I kind of knew of Asura's Wrath, but I just never really gave it the time of day until Will was like, this game is awesome. This game deserves to be played if you want to experience, the ridiculous, like bombastic nature that is Asura's Wrath. So I definitely, I jumped in and I played it. It was part of our, our audience voted for it. For me to kind of review, give a yes or no answer, recommend for Asura's Wrath. And, top level, of course, I recommend this game. On top of that, we talk about the anime influences. My very first game, like my very first Cyber Connect game specifically, was the Naruto Ninja Storm games. And the thing is I love Naruto. I'm a longtime Naruto fan. I watched all of the original anime, but most of the way I consumed Shippuden, Naruto's Shippuden, which is like kind of the second half of him being like a teenager, was consumed through playing the Ninja Storm games, because I just didn't really have time to watch 400 episodes of an anime. But, you know, of course, and then you go back and you watch the highlight fight scenes and all that stuff that weren't in the game. But yeah, so that was kind of like my introduction to this development team. And I just love anime, and I love these. Obviously, long time Dragon Ball Z fan, and that identity is clearly within this as well. We talk about, you know, we'll talk about the fights, and it's, you know, Goku and Vegeta just in a different format, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of right there with us.
Right. Dudes getting punched into the ground and leaving craters where they land and stuff like that. Yeah, that's Asura's Wrath is full of that stuff too. So like, to do our top level kind of thoughts here, as like that playable anime that's broken up into these episodes. Each episode has, you know, an arc of a story. They all basically have a fight scene, and they almost all end on cliffhangers, basically. It's interesting to like play through a game that's structured this way. And like, I think I enjoyed like, I enjoyed this story and the like the hype moments and stuff like that. I'm not the world's biggest anime fan, and I know how broad that statement is and how almost useless it is. But it's just not like the type of thing that I gravitate to. Truth be told, I don't watch much of anything. Too busy doing this podcast most of the time. I am just now like currently, it's taken me 6 months to get like halfway through the first season of Neon Genesis Evangelion, but I am watching that for the first time.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it, but it's just not like a thing that I gravitate to. But I enjoyed the way that it works in Asura's Wrath. As a game, like as an action game, I think this is pretty bad. And it seems to be that like it's designed in a way where you play the action parts so that you can get to the next cutscene and see the next cool thing that's about to happen. And that's the best part of the game is watching the cutscenes, seeing the big hype moments and just the insane things that happen. So I enjoyed Asura's Wrath. I think it's a really interesting thing to make. It feels right at home with those 7 out of 10 favorites that you'll never shut up about, like those types of games. But it's an interesting thing where like what you're doing in Asura's Wrath is never as interesting as what you're looking at. And I think that a lot of people, we'll get into it for sure, but that's not something that a lot of people go to video games for. Like a lot of people, the primary thing they want to like do is do something interesting with your hands, with your character, etc. And then if you happen to watch something cool, that's cool too. Asura's Wrath is the complete opposite. I don't think there's anything about anything that I did, a fight from a mechanical perspective, learning the moves of a boss fight, or like the rail shooter sequences where I was like, this is really fun. It was more like, look at what the fuck is happening on the screen right now while I'm pressing the same button over and over again, stuff like that. So it's a really interesting game. Super glad that I played it. And it almost kind of defies like the way you would traditionally evaluate a game, because I think if you were like, gameplay gets equal points to story, gets equal points to music, gets equal points, and then you build out a rubric like that, if like that's the way you want to do it, Asura's Wrath's not going to score very high on something like that. But my enjoyment of it is beyond that. So it's a cool game. I've said that several times now. So what do you guys think here at the top?
Yeah, it's just very unique in that way. And just like you said, I mean, I love the game, but I can't sit here and say, you know, DMC, it is not, right? Bayonetta, it is not. If you're looking for an action game where you get to like twist your fingers up while doing really cool, flashy combos, this is not really that game that you're looking for, because this game is not technically difficult. Man, hell, I would say it's probably not difficult in general. This is probably one of the more easygoing games to get into. Sometimes you get your butt kicked a little bit, but the big thing is that there's nothing you do as far as button presses that really takes a bunch of dexterity or like memorization. He doesn't have like, 10 string combos. You have your punch button, you got your heavy punch button, you have your shoot button, which turns into a longer shoot button, and then you jump and that's like the extent outside of your burst meter.
And then you do like 10,000 QTEs also.
Yes, and then you just press hella buttons. That's the big thing. Yeah. Like you said, that's the real draw, and that's what, for people that played the demo or kind of saw it at Tokyo Game Show, places like that, that was the either I'm interested or the turnoff, because you're in that area of God of War, things like that. People are interested in QTEs, but one of the things that probably got folks most turned off to it was, is the whole game QTE? This is like action version of Until Dawn. So it's very interesting in that way. It's like you said, it's not so much gameplay, so much as what's happening on the screen and how you barely but still interact with it.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I like this game because of how weird it is and how strange it is. It's funny, I did a lot of research into the development and what went on and what was going on at Capcom during this time that Asura's Wrath came out in 2012. And in 2012, there were 3 to 4 primary games that Capcom put out at the forefront, and that was Asura's Wrath, Dragon's Dogma, Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil Revelations, and then a crossover Street Fighter and Tekken. And this was the height of the era where people were kind of scratching their heads, especially when we talk about Resident Evil 6 and what the fuck is Capcom doing? What are they doing? And the reality is that they had been making so much money off of these kind of pillars of franchises that they had been building over the past decade, is that they had an excess of money and they had an appetite for risk. And with that appetite for risk, they really wanted to pivot to capture more of that Western audience. They saw blue waters there, the same way that Nintendo did with the Wii. And they said, we want to do this. And I think Asura's Wrath is a perfect example of them being like, we want to capture fans of anime, because this is when people are also starting to catch on. The businessmen started catching on slowly that, oh my gosh, Western audiences really do like anime. And then, of course, the gory action games of God of War. There are tons of comparisons between this game and God of War and God Hand, these, brutal action. We're capturing the 18 to 35 male demographic to play this game. Not saying that anybody else can't play, but that's that was the targeted demo for this when they came out. And it really shows that on its sleeve in the way that it's presented. Like the both of you said, this is not a technical game to play, but in my opinion, as an anime fan, this is a really interesting game to view and experience, not as much play, but just to experience as an audience member. And I think that's what really makes this game special and kind of stand out amongst the past. And of course, become a fan favorite, become this kind of this classic of yore that people can go back to and be like you said, rep that 7 out of 10 until they die. And that's why I think I like it the most.
It's definitely a game of its era for sure. No one, especially not AAA, they're not making games like Asura's Wrath right now. And
cowards.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of just weird shit going on from major publishers on the Xbox 360 and the PS3, especially when you if you were to look at what's the top things that they published, they're Resident Evil, like you said, Dragon's Dogma, they're pretty traditional type things, even though they're both doing weird things within that tradition. And then you start looking down and you dig a little bit further in the bargain bin, which Asura's Wrath, not a bargain bin game, by the way.
No, full price.
Yeah, full price still $60 if you want a copy. And what I'm trying to say is if you go digging a little bit further in those games on the 360 and the PS3, you find just weird creative projects.
Yeah.
A lot of them. And it's cool. It's cool to dig one out and play it. And we're going to talk more about it after the music break upcoming. So let's listen to a bit of music. We'll come back and we'll set up the story for Asura's Wrath. In Asura's Wrath, you play as Asura, who's voiced in English by Liam O'Brien, and Asura is one of 8 cyborg demigods tasked with protecting humanity in this sci-fi future eternal war against these creatures called the Gohma. The game begins with Asura teaming up with the other demigods to fight off a Gohma attack, including a big kind of world-sized serpent thing called Vlitra. And soon after that, though, they return home, and Asura's wife, Durga, is killed. His daughter, Mithra, is kidnapped. Asura is betrayed and blamed for the murder of the emperor, who got killed while all this is happening. So there's a big betrayal happening, and it sets up what Asura's Wrath's story is all about. Asura and his wrath on a quest for revenge, basically, to take out the people who wronged him and rescue his daughter, Mithra. And they go through why all of these things happened, but at its core, the story is a revenge story. And you, Nick, you mentioned the God of War comparisons. We have the two angriest men in video games, Asura and Kratos, especially the old version of Kratos. So we have a man too angry to die revenge story here. So what did you guys think of the revenge tale, first and foremost?
Look, it's a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sitting there, you're fighting giant monsters, and then your boys kill your wife and then kill you and steal your daughter. I mean, it happens to all of us. So
yeah,
honestly,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where it sets the stage, it gets you ready. And, you know, I feel like understandably, it's like, okay, I know why this guy's pissed now. Is it super special and crazy? No, not really. But of course, that's what comes later as far as the lengths he actually goes to get that revenge and do everything. But I was perfectly fine with the setup. Outside of maybe, you know, the whole killing the wife fridging thing. I feel like that's obviously played out even back in 2012. But it's just fairly, it's the easiest way to know, oh, what's the motivation? Wife dead. That's just, you know, what everyone kind of goes to, unfortunately.
Yeah, as a revenge story, I mean, I think this is just the driving motivation. I mean, it's really just the MacGuffin of this plot. It's just his anger, right? And that's what the developers wanted to focus on. They said, oh, what's relatable to all people? Being really fucking angry. Yeah. And that's kind of just the core center of who Asura was. One of the things about the beginning that I think was really interesting, and this is not really a spoiler, but something that really perked me up when I first started playing this game was how visually striking, like episode 1 specifically, is so visually striking. And they do a really good job of like interweaving classic like Buddhist and Hindu iconography and representation, like celestial forms of the Buddha, and of course like what Durga is doing during the initial attack on Vlitra, and when they're in space. Like it makes a really strong statement in the opening, something that I don't think that they were going to be able to cash in on a little bit later, because it's very much a one-to-one, like, okay, like let's go down the list of the demigods that Asura is going to tackle here. But I think one of the things that kind of makes this story like a little less personal, and of course it is very like cartoony and 2D, and one of the things, it doesn't really make it an emotional story for me as an audience member. I think it's cool, but it's not really like, I'm not really feeling anything in my heart as I'm playing through this game. But I think it takes place over the course of like 30,000 years ? We're not really sure. Yeah, a really long time. So it's one of those things that I think it's like, yeah, man too angry to die, but like it takes him a really long time to get where he needs to go. So it's interesting that they chose that route.
Yeah, he's definitely too angry to die, but he's not too angry to like get encased in stone for centuries and you know, worshipped as a god by the people who live there and stuff like that. And then he breaks out and he goes back to his revenge tale, and it happens like a couple times throughout the game. Yeah.
It's almost like comical at a certain point. I'm like, oh, am I dead again? Okay,
yeah.
All right, I guess I'll crawl out of hell.
Yeah, he does get like kicked down into like the underworld several times. There's a prominent character down there named the Golden Spider that kind of like gets him back on the path to getting his revenge and stuff like that. Nick, you touched on something I wanted to go back to, and that's like the setting, the art design, the nomenclature for all of like the characters and things like that happen, or that, you know, the game features. And it really is based on, like you said, that Buddhist and some Hindu names, iconography, art, architecture, stuff like that, even down to like, okay, so I got on this thing of like, so I recognize like the Buddhas and stuff like that. So then I'm like, all right, does Asura mean something in that? And yes, it does. So like in Hinduism, and apologies to anyone if I make a mistake here, this is light research, but An Asura, the word means a being that's seeking power, that's related to the heavenly and divine beings called the Devas. That's in Hinduism, and in Buddhism, Asura is equivalent to something like a Titan or something like that. So we can see why they named the character Asura. And you go down the list. Durga, who's Asura's wife, is a Hindu deity. Valitra, which is the big enemy that you fight in that opening set piece, shares a really common name with a kind of personification of drought in Hinduism. So like the big enemy in this game, it relates to a big enemy, I suppose, in the religion. There's an energy source that the demigods use called the mantra, of course, and we've heard the word mantra before in the way that it relates to meditation and things like that. So they took a lot of like the proper nouns and things and like turned them into characters and equivalencies and things like that. One of the cool things that I think the game does is they're not just names. Like, based on the light research that I did, they at least make sense in how they're used. And so like mantra is the name of the energy that the demigods use to power up and things like that. And the way that they use mantra, the way that they acquire it throughout the story, it's a big part of the story. It makes sense with like what that word is in real life and what it represents and things like that. So beyond just making characters look the way that they might look if you look at religious artwork and things like that, the way that it actually does tie into the story. And it ends up with like the story has some cool ideas. Like Nick said, it's not something that like really tugged at my heartstrings, but I was going through being like, that looks really fucking cool. And the story thing is kind of cool. And there is some story stuff worthy of discussion for sure. Not just like, remember that time someone threw the moon at somebody else, you know. There is substance to the story, which we'll talk about in the spoiler section.
Yeah. Especially surprising amount of, I don't think nuance is the right, but like just connection between characters. Especially you look at this game and you hear how people talk about it. And just like you said, right, you knew someone gets hit with the moon and then people get punched and that's like the extent of it. But I mean, when you actually play through the game and experience that game, play through and see how the characters interact with each other as it continues along, there's a true story. Is it everybody's cup of tea? I'm sure probably not, but this is definitely not just A to Z, rage and murder is the name of the game. There's plenty here that I think you or anyone else that actually enjoys a good story, whether it be in a game, TV show, etc., would get some juice out of, definitely.
Yeah, and I actually think like if we're on the comparison and we're gonna make a touchstone to like something that I think more people are familiar with, like the story is laid out very similar to God of War 1, where Kratos loses his family and goes on this thing to kill the gods and things like that. And I think there's a lot more substance in Asura's Wrath's story than God of War 1. That's not to say that that series doesn't eventually go to those places, but the first game, as far as I remember it, a lot of killing and a lot of screaming. And there was a press B to have sex mini game. I remember that too.
The games of their times.
There is a weird, sexy mini game in Asura's Wrath too.
Hey. Yeah, they also did that.
The hot springs is a crazy.
Yeah,
it's like its own mini episode. I feel like
it is.
They go
just chilling in the hot spring.
It's anime. You got to have a hot spring / beach episode. That's what they did.
That's true.
So that was the filler.
Yeah. Speaking of anime, so like the structure of Asura's Wrath, we've already kind of touched on it, but it's structured into episodes and it's structured into 3 acts. And then there's a DLC act also. And so this was a big thing when I started playing. It was a huge surprise to me to have like the pacing basically cut, like, you get cliffhangers all the time. Mm-hmm. And then you get like those announcer voices that come in and say like, previously, this is what happened. And then here's what to look forward to on the next episode and stuff like that. And so each episode is broken up into, like 30 minutes long ish. Yep. Roughly the same time, it would take you to watch an episode of TV or something. So it's interesting. And it made for a really nice way for me to be like, I'm going to get on Asura's Wrath. I'm going to play one chapter and then I'm going to do something else. Easy to break it up. But what did you guys think of the structure of it?
Yeah, so the structure is really interesting. And one thing that I think was speculated and was rumored is something that Telltale actually perfected and went on later to do, whether it was Wolf Among Us or the Walking Dead games, in terms of their sequential drops, like not releasing the game all at once. You see Don't Nod doing this with the Life is Strange release titles. I don't think Don't Nod is doing that anymore, but like obviously Life is Strange as a franchise
they did it with the Bloom and Rage game.
Did they do it with Bloom and
Rage? It was 2
Okay.
parts. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're releasing it parts. I think there was discussion amongst the directors of this game that they wanted to actually treat this as a, small drop, bits and pieces there, and make it like a micro, kind of like a $20 title every time that they dropped it. And I think the decision was ultimately not to do that. They wanted to pivot it away. But something about the development of this game as well that I think maybe it really could have been artistic choice. Of course, we're not in the room with the creators, so we won't really know. There's only a limited amount of interview data that's out there to kind of pour over. But what I understand was that they actually created the story for this game prior towards actually working on the gameplay, which, if you know anything about game development, is not a normal way to go about it. Some games that we experience today, like, The Last of Us was a story that was written by Neil Druckmann prior to their making the game. But before being greenlit, like, you have a proof of concept that you have to come to the table with a bunch of producers and say, here's the idea of the game and here's how you break it down. But Capcom had outsourced this to CyberConnect, and they decided to go about it kind of a reverse way, where like, we really want to make this strong, impactful story, which is, it's really funny when you can you can tell that this was the idea, and then they were like, let's shove some gameplay in there. And that's why you see, like, you have the 4 main components. You have a rail shooter, you have a arena beat 'em up, and then you have QTE sequences. And what am I missing? It's something else. Cutscenes. Yeah. Just watching it, and that's like the small and large of it. But I think that, like, the structure, I love it. Of course, Will said it earlier, like the Full Metal Alchemist sequences of this time on Asura's Wrath, like it kind of got me as I was playing it. I was like, every time I finished a chapter, I was looking forward to the next one. And it was that cliffhanger sequence to pull me through the game. And I think it helps playing this game 15 years later after it was released, and I don't really have a lot of, like, I'm not attached to how much I spent. I think I spent $20 on this game, and it regularly goes on sale on Steam for like $5. But the reality is that I'm in there and, like, I feel like I got a deal, and this is like just a hidden gem, a nugget of a game that I'm able to experience at this point in time. But as it released, as you had previously mentioned, Dave, this is a $60 title with $10 of value that I feel like a lot of people were like, we didn't really get what we wanted, and we didn't even get an ending with our $60 full price game.
That's the bigger issue to me, is not like the structure or the length of the game. It's that you don't see the whole game by buying the physical disc. Especially for me, because I played this on Xbox 360. There is no Xbox 360 store anymore. Right. You cannot download the DLC where the end of the story is, which sucks. I mean, like, they obviously weren't forward thinking in that when they decided to do it that way. And I know that if I had like a Series X or something, I could download it, but I don't. And so I couldn't. But yeah, Will, how do you feel about this as kind of a playable anime, as it were?
So just to underline what Nick was saying, I mean, I enjoy the structure. I like the bumpers. I thought they're really interesting, especially how they're really tied into each episode that you're on, or you have the ability later on to just insert any kind of concept art that you end up unlocking during the game, which I'm a huge fan of, like, concept art and the character models and things like that unlocking, which this game does in spades. Like, it just throws it at you every episode. You'll get like 5 or 6 different things. So yeah, kind of like how Dave was saying, you can, have 30 minutes, 20 minutes to play, you beat a level, and then I'll probably burn another 10 minutes or so after the fact, just like looking over concept art that I've unlocked during that last run and be like, oh, this looks so cool. This looks so great. The setting is neat.
And you get some nice lore notes when you look at the concept art too. Like there's actually like something in the concept art we'll talk about in the spoilers section that's like a really important part of the story to me, and like what's probably my favorite part of the storyline is not really Asura's revenge story. It's something else about the world and like the way things are and why things are the way they are. Yeah. And the game doesn't tell you that. It's written in the concept art notes though. And that kind of like really recontextualized like what is actually happening in this story in a really cool way. So definitely, if anyone out there is going to play this, recommend go look at those. They look awesome, but they do have cool like little lore notes too.
Yep. Definitely check out the concept art. And on top of that, after beating levels, you get the outro like pictures where they give you kind of like an epilogue of each episode.
They're very cool.
All of those are really, really neat. They're like, I'm pretty sure they're voiced over, but yeah, they're voiced over. They're cool. And they're drawn or illustrated by a number of people from like the Cyber Connect team. So folks that have worked on the Naruto games, things like that. And then some others outside of that as well. There's a few people that are just outside of the company, period. But they were like, hey, you want to draw some sweet art for the end of an episode? And they should, why not? And it gives you plenty of lore afterwards too. So,
do you want to draw Asura and like this other demigod like facing off like in this classic like heavyweight bout type like preview image? Like, do you want to draw that, make it look super badass? They're like, yeah, I got you.
They said I'm halfway done already.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, I'm a huge fan of that one. And also, not to run too far away from it, but I would love to give Liam O'Brien his flowers for his VA work. Because, man, the screams and the emotion you feel, people, especially in the anime world, they love to like crap on a dub. They'll be like, oh man, you know, the English voice actor is never going to be as good as the Japanese voice actor. He went off. Like, he did some work. You know, I've heard the rumors, and of course it's speculation, probably not real, but yeah, he was screaming so loud and strong in the booth that, you know, like he was coughing up blood, which I would believe it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, if you just listen to it, like half of Asura's like lines feel like they're just him screaming.
Just roars.
Yeah. That's one of the things that like if I have like a mental video of a snippet of gameplay from Asura's Wrath, part of what I hear is the yells during combat of him just going like over and over again. Over and over and over and over again. And of course he didn't record that every time, but Asura is an angry boy, and the voice acting needed that emotion. So yeah, it's good for sure. So kind of on that note, one of the coolest things about like the presentation of it, so we already have like the structure, the anime structure. And so within that, we have a bunch of spectacle that I think is done like super, super well. And it leads to super, super memorable moments. Like I remember reading people kind of like tweeting about something that happened in Asura's Wrath and reading that and being like, that sounds incredibly cool. I wonder what it would look like. And then like the way that it does look when you actually see it. That's one of the things that I think they do best in presenting this all is giving you that sense of power, that sense of scale. I think, Nick, you mentioned the Dragon Ball kind of like, think about the sense of power you get watching an episode of that and guys punching each other through mountains and shit like that. Like that's all over this game. The game begins when you're out in outer space. You're just like flying through space. How are you alive out there? It doesn't matter. You're out in outer space. It looks badass. And like, it's an Xbox 360 game. So like the polygons of it, like the resolution and stuff's not the best anymore since I played this on the 360. I'm pretty confident this game would look incredible if it just got a 4K up-res like remaster.
Absolutely.
The art style is not like that super high fidelity art style that like the worst aging Xbox 360 games have, you know, like you look at like Fallout 3 or something like that. You're like, it doesn't look very good anymore, you know? Asura's Wrath doesn't have that problem. Like it's super colorful, it's super stylized, and then like that scale and that power. Like, I don't know, like if you play it on a Series X, does it automatically up-res it? Because I know it does that sometimes.
I feel like it up-res to a degree, but it still wasn't like super great. You can tell, especially when they zoom in close, that, you know, you saw the little pixels and jaggy, so it wasn't like it was super, super sharp. But I mean, it's one of those, I feel like it looked better, as it should, than it was when I played on the 360. But yeah, definitely was nowhere near distracting as far as the visuals there. It held up overall. I think in the overall style of the game definitely pulled a lot of weight there. It's kind of like when people look at something like Borderlands, even Borderlands 1, which is obviously old, just the style of the game kind of helps push it to be a little bit easier to look at.
Mm-hmm.
a little more timeless, I think. Yeah, I think the performance of this game is where it starts to show its age a little bit more, especially when because you're basically just emulating it on the Xbox Series, machines that you're playing it on, or if you're playing on PC Game Pass is what it's doing. And there's a lot of frame tearing that you experience. And I think, of course, like, we talk about like the performance, the visual presentation as well in this game. The camera really just it's not good at all. And maybe Capcom just didn't figure out cameras right at this point in time, because I mean, I don't think Resident Evil 6's camera was that much better, or 5 for that matter. So there's not much lineage that they have to kind of like bank on in terms of mechanical presentation. But yeah, I do love I think the stylized nature and the visual representation of these characters is the thing that is the best for me, the biggest draw.
Yeah. It's really cool the way the characters look, especially the demigods. They have this kind of like, I couldn't tell, like, partly because I'm playing it on an Xbox 360, but it's like it's somewhere between looking like paintbrush strokes or like wood grain effects, like on their skin, which is really cool. And so, like we said, it's not going for that like make it look as realistic as possible for 2012. It's super stylized. And that's the thing where it's like, if we do get a remaster of it, it's going to look fucking awesome, because they're not, it's not Fallout 3 being brought up into 4K. Sorry to pick on Fallout 3. I like that game a lot, but remembering how it looks, that's another thing.
Yeah, like any of the Resistance games, like if you go back and you look at screenshots of how like the original Gears looked on the 360 when you came out, like it was, of course, like, that 360 sepia grain, like
the greatest game
every
of all
single
time.
one.
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah, Asura's Wrath, Xbox 360, PS3 game, no piss filter.
Colorful.
Yeah.
Super colorful game. And that's what you get. You don't have to hide the deficiencies of like, what you're trying to do versus the tech that you have by making everything, 3 or 4 different shades of green like Fallout 3 was. Mm-hmm. That'll be the last time I mention Fallout 3. I'm very sorry for that. I like that game a lot. But yeah, it just, we have a good example of like art style specifically from this era. Not a lot of games from this era really, really hold up visually in a way where you're like, if you showed this to someone who wasn't there and like didn't, wasn't raised by the piss filter like I was, they would look at Asura's Wrath and be like, that's a cool looking game. And they would look at Metal Gear Solid 4 and being like, why is it so yellow? Like, what are they doing here?
I just have stuck in my head. Dave was born in the piss filter.
Yeah.
Molded by it.
You merely adopted the piss filter. Yeah.
It's interesting. You talk about like kind of like the artistic representation of the characters and how they're designed. And of course, as we are biomechanical demigods, but something that was really cool that I noticed the first time that I kind of really dug into it and, experienced the story, that the immediate striking reminder that I had when looking at these characters' faces, I was like, this is just cyberpunk. The way that they have the lines, like the metal lines that are going through the different musculature and going into their faces and their back. And of course, Will is experiencing this right now, so he might have a little bit of a touch point. But yeah, I was like, this is a huge like nod, or at least cyberpunk, was kind of maybe influenced by this a little bit, if you could say. I liked it a lot.
We would all be so lucky as to say that every game is influenced by Asura's Wrath in some small way.
Yeah, exactly.
So the other part of like the presentation of it all is that they wanted you to feel involved in it. They didn't want this to be action sequence and then you watch the anime episode, which is basically what this turns into. Is like you fight a bunch of enemies, and at a certain point you build up a bar throughout the fight called the burst gauge. And when the burst gauge is full, whether it's in like an arena fight or whether it's in a rail shooter sequence and you shoot enough things down, you get to press the right trigger and it will do the burst ability. And what that does is it just kicks off cutscenes, basically. But your involvement doesn't stop there, because this game has the most QTEs of any game that's not, a Telltale or an Until Dawn, or a game that's like, you're there and you're going to be doing QTEs.
Yep.
Way more than Indigo Prophecy. Guaranteed.
Yeah. Or Heavy Rain. It's up there with Heavy Rain. I feel like Heavy Rain, the David Cage games are pretty up there with the QTEs.
Yeah, the David Cage games as well. And that's Heavy Rain was probably a similar time frame as Asura's Wrath here. Like, I think this is when so Resident Evil 4 had QTEs, and but those were like during set piece sequences. You do a QTE to outrun a boulder or something like that. And then I think people started to get the idea of how do we make people feel involved in cutscenes? Because watching them is not enough anymore. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, we need to just fill them with QTEs. And that's what Asura's Wrath is like. So this is not a game where you can set the controller down ever. You always have to be ready for a QTE. You cannot be like me and half watch cutscenes and half check your phone, because you'll miss things that are coming up. Mm-hmm. And so the cutscenes are full of QTEs. The combats are full of the part where Goku and Vegeta come together and they're punching the shit out of each other. That's a QTE in Asura's Wrath, or a sequence of them, or you need to mash or something like that. This game is just full of them. And modern games have basically stopped doing this entirely. There's no QTEs left in modern games. I personally, I don't mind them. I don't want this many as there are in Asura's Wrath. I don't mind a QTE every now and then, especially if I know that this is the kind of game it is. But this does feel kind of excessive to me. I think you can trust me to just watch a cutscene. The shit that's happening in the cutscenes is super cool. I don't need to press a button to throw the moon at someone. I can just watch him throw the moon at someone. It's effectively the same thing, I think.
For me, it's all cutscenes aren't made equal. Or rather, all QTEs, I should say, aren't made equal. I never got sick of the mashing, tapping square.
Oh, okay.
Or, the punch. All those, I was always because I'm used to also playing Dragon Ball games back in the day when you're sitting there dueling against your friends. So I'm just always fun. But then you have some where it's you need to spin the right stick counterclockwise to ball your fist up. And I was I don't know. I don't need to do this. It's okay. You can take this one away from me. But I loved them in general. I'm a big QTE aficionado. Like you said, all the QTEs that Dave does not want, give me the QTEs.
Put extra in Will's game. Yeah. It's I don't want to eat the mushrooms on my plate. I'll just slide them over onto Will's plate. And that's the
How
QTEs.
come you get 2 QTEs? I was yeah.
And one of the things about the QTEs as well that Will and I discussed in terms of the format and the function of playing this game is similar to what you were saying again, Will, is that not all QTEs are equal in this game, to the extent of there are some sequences where you're playing through the game, and of course you have the main battle sequences where you go through and you beat up your enemies to get to that cutscene, the favorite cutscene moment when you go through the game. And then of course in that cutscene moment you are still pressing QTEs to progress the story forward. I would say 98% of the time it does not matter to the game's progress whether or not you hit that QTE. The thing will still happen and it will still go through. It just, the hitting that actual button only matters to your score at the end of each chapter, or your synchronization rate, which again affects the ability to unlock other secret scenes that are later on in the game when you go back and you realize, oh, I have to actually really access the true ending of this game to understand what's happening. But then there are also sequences where they kind of fake you out. They trick you out, and you're playing against different characters. And the trick is that if you always see your health bar on screen, you got to make sure that you're still playing this game, and you can't just sit there and do it, because they will give you a fail state every now and again and then bring you back. It's rare, but it does happen. And it's one of those things where they're like, yeah, we want you to be invested. You can't just be a passive audience member. That's why you like games, right? You want to watch and play the movie at the same time.
You never want to take a break, right? You never want to do the action part and then set the controller down and exhale and enjoy a cutscene. You want to still be in gamer mode, hunched over like, okay, I gotta fucking lock in here so I don't miss these QTEs. I think
lock in.
Yeah. Some of them, it's like Nick said, like most of them are not necessary to hit in order to progress, but like you don't want to miss them. Like I never got to a point where it's like, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to let all these things miss, because if you hit them, you get to see extra cool stuff especially if you're in a boss fight. Those are the ones you have to hit, is like this big attack is coming. The way to avoid the attack is not to like dodge or parry at the right time. It's to hit a QTE, which like functionally parrying and QTEs are not that different, but in Asura's Wrath, they switch up the buttons on you. So you can't like, it's not like I press the parry button. It's, I need to press the button that comes up, and it's not the same button every time if you fail it multiple times in a row. So it's like not exactly the same thing in this. I don't know. Like, I don't mind QTEs, but I definitely disagree with the idea that like I will be more engaged in your game if you force me to do QTEs during cutscenes. And I think that the gaming industry has moved way past that as well. And part of the reason why I kind of like definitely feel this way is the DLC chapters, which I cannot play anymore. I watched on YouTube. So I didn't do any QTEs, and I enjoyed the cutscenes. I enjoyed it just fine without having a controller in my hand. So that's kind of like a feather in the cap of the episodic anime structure of Asura's Wrath, is like I watched the last 4 chapters on YouTube as an anime, and it worked. And I didn't have to fight the boss fights that looked really fucking annoying.
Oh, God. It is really annoying.
It works as a thing, but you don't need that artificial engagement of like constant QTEs to keep me engaged. So we've kind of talked about the gameplay a little bit. Let's kind of dive into that and what it's like to actually play the game. There's 2 main like types of gameplay. There are kind of these action combat sequences. They usually take place either in hallways or in large round arenas. And then there are rail shooter sections. The game starts with a rail shooter section. We can just talk about that real quick. They're like fine, they're functioning rail shooter sequences. I don't think I'd want to play an entire game like this, but as a thing that happens every couple hours, they were fine. And they're usually out in space, so they're visually very fucking cool most of the time. Especially like there's some late in the game when you're like flying up to the big bad for like the final showdown, and it's like it's a thing that's like it's bigger than the planet Earth that you're flying up to, and it's really fucking cool visually. And so like to just do some bog standard rail shooting while the coolest thing you've seen in a while is out in the background, I'm in. Like I don't need more than that, Yeah,
it puts you in the very Panzer Dragoon mindset. If, folks listening have played that, that's effectively what it feels like. You're just shooting into, space. You're just shooting into the nether as you're going towards something, and occasionally dodging items out of their way. But even if you don't dodge it, kind of like with the QTEs, as long as you're not playing on a harder difficulty where your health gets drained all the way, not a huge deal.
Yeah, and major shout out to that sequence as well, because apparently, the Baldur's Gate 3 developers straight up just stole the Nautiloid design from the enemies in the beginning of this game. So no, it's great. They're really cool looking. I will say this is going to sound like a little bit of a tangent when it comes to the actual combat and the mechanics of playing this game.
Yeah,
but stick with me here. I was in Durham a little while back. I was at a West Elm outlet because I'm shopping for furniture for my house, right? And I'm just by myself. I'm not with anybody. I'm wandering into the store that I probably shouldn't be in, right? Arguably by myself, just a single man wandering around. And this stranger walks up to me. This random sales associate walks up to me, and without hesitating a beat, she says, "You look befuddled. Is there anything I can do to help you?" And at first I just like stared at her because I couldn't believe the stranger just said that to me. But I was like, I think I'm good. What I will say is that I was befuddled playing this game and trying to engage in the mechanics of Asura's Wrath and like fighting the enemies. Like I'm pretty sure I played the tutorial at least twice to try and understand what the game was asking for me in terms of when am I supposed to press my like light and heavy attack prompts, like how am I supposed to jump, and like when is the appropriate time to like swing my camera around to actually see the enemies that are off screen that are shooting me. They do this really weird thing where they give you different, of course, these different armies of the divine, the deities, the demigods that come and try and attack Asura. They give you different forms of their minions that will come, and some of them are, you know, smaller ads, and then they give you heavier like mini bosses in the different arenas that you're in. And then sometimes they have ones that are like hovering on discs that are shooting you. And it's one of those things where it's like the mechanics, I guess maybe it made sense in 2012. Maybe there were so many games like this that people were just like intuitively clicked. And I'm not saying that this is a crazy hard game, but I had to continuously remind myself, oh yes, Asura has a thing where he can shoot people in the sky while you're managing like ranged attacks or like jumping around. Like I don't have to like kill every enemy on the screen, and I'm trying to get my score up. I'm trying to play the game right. But yeah, it was definitely like a confusing experience overall, managing like the context in the different arenas. Not that it was hard by any stretch of the imagination, but I was just like, what are they really asking for me here?
Yeah. I agree. I understood the basics of the combat, and basically I was always just waiting for that, because you have a heavy attack. You can also use it to hit enemies that are down on the ground and like do a finishing move and stuff. That thing has a cooldown. It's a pretty long cooldown as well. Pretty annoyingly long in my experience. And beyond like the basic mechanics of it, I'm with you, Nick. I never fully understood, like, is there a way to like make this feel good to play? Because it doesn't feel good to play. It's really like slippery. I felt like there was some delay. It might have been because I was playing through a capture card, but that's like a possibility. But I felt like there was a little bit of delay, and it just never felt good in the way that, like you mentioned, a Devil May Cry or Bayonetta. Those are games that are like either of this era or before, in Devil May Cry's case, that like, you know, you see people play those. Those are smooth. You go from action to action and combo to combo. And Asura's Wrath is really just like light attack. Oh, the heavy attack cooldown's over. Boom, heavy attack. Okay, now we're back to waiting. There's a ranged attack. I never fully understood how to be good at it. There's some like defensive stuff you can do with, like, if an enemy's coming up, you basically have a parry, but it's a QTE, and it's not one button. It's different depending on what's happening. So you do have to like always be on the lookout and have the QTE reaction time. Like that's the thing that, like, especially in boss fights, one of the criticisms about QTEs, and one of the reasons I think they're so like discouraged now, is the accessibility part of it, where like you have a huge number of your player base who, if you put like reaction time based QTEs that will fuck you up if you miss them, like in combat and in a boss fight, that's bad design now, because you're literally cutting people's like physical capabilities out. And like not everyone can do it. So like that happens sometimes, but like the basic mechanics of it, I just kind of like hit the buttons as they were available to me with the heavy attack, and just waited for that burst gauge to fill up. I have a thing about the burst gauge. I wanted to get your guys' take on it. But Will, when I think of like people who like, you know, try to like get good at combat systems, beat games on hard mode and stuff like that, you're one of the people I know who like really digs into that. So, I mean, no shade to Nick, all the shade to me, because I definitely don't do that. But do you feel the same way as we do about like the kind of basic mechanics of Asura's Wrath, or did you get in the groove of it?
Well, I'll say, first off, you're selling yourself short, because both of y'all like Souls games, and I know you definitely, Dave, play plenty of Souls games. So
that's true.
You know, you got yourself some good stuff there. I will say, to answer your question from before, you know, does this get good, or is it good? No, that's the long and short answer. The combat is not good. We've compared it to, you know, to games significantly better than it, Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, etc. You know, the list kind of goes on there. God of War, especially the newer ones. However, the big thing is that the game itself, once again, like we said at the kind of top of the conversation, is not technically super difficult. So if anything, I kind of felt like playing with one arm behind my back, because I'm used to juggling enemies and, you know, having some really good hit stun on an enemy so you can like knock someone down and then run over and do something else. When in this game, everything feels a little less weighty. You're not getting those really strong, heavy strikes, even with the heavy attack. You're knocking someone away, but it's like, Asura, so pissed he's knocking away like flies, and you don't really get the weight of you knocking away a really heavy enemy. However, one of the things that really helps is, aside from that burst meter, you have another meter that's kind of underneath that. That's like your berserker meter. It's like your kind of rage meter, essentially. And that's where it really shines. The burst meter obviously gets you from cutscene to cutscene, and that's the important part for progressing the story. But as far as making the gameplay minute to minute feel good, it's about not getting hit and filling that berserker bar. Because once that berserker bar is filled, that's when your Y attacks, if I'm not mistaken, have either very little or no cooldown.
I don't think they have a cooldown if you're in that mode. Yeah.
And then same thing for, you just makes your normal attack stronger. It makes your hit stun stronger. So the point of that, and you'll see it, after you finish each of your fighting sequences where they kind of give you a grade, a la some of those games we mentioned before, is the point is to attack and not get hit. And then once you get to a certain point of you being enraged, then it's like, all right, I can have fun. But up until that point, it's more of avoiding damage so that you can have fun. It's not unlike a Dark Souls. It's like, don't get hit so I can enjoy this game.
It's interesting you say that, Will, too, because it's like the Y attacks specifically in this game actually are kind of flashy and fun and like a little comical. Like you're flipping elephants up and down like they're fidget spinners and using these huge like tanky enemies like their weapons against them. It's almost like they're doing that. And if I were to backseat develop this game, it does a decade after it was developed, I was like, why couldn't we just lean into that? Why couldn't we, if we really want to emphasize like the cutscenes, why couldn't we just make everything that Asura does over the top and punching enemies into dust, that sort of thing? But that's okay.
I will say I watched the DLC, and the person who did that Let's Play was really good at the combat. And so like they didn't get hit a lot, and it still didn't like look cool to play. It was just like they're dodging all the attacks. And when I say dodging, I don't mean like dodge rolling. I mean like they're just running out of the way, jumping out of the way, stuff like that. And one of the things they did is they used the ranged attack a lot. So that's probably a way to like keep things under control, maybe keep distance if it has a little pushback to it. I never used that unless it was a flying enemy that I couldn't like jump up and hit, basically. So like I tried a little bit, and eventually I got to a point where I like fell into like, this is a thing that's going to get me from the beginning of the fight to the end of the fight. And it's not going to like feel great to play. I will disagree with what Will said. It's because Will's a pro gamer. I think the late game boss fights are really difficult, and they required a lot of me like learning their moves, which is good. But the way that you learn to avoid their moves, in my experience, was it felt really cheesy to just like, don't be near them at all. You have to be on the other side of the screen. And then there's one move they use that has a QTE counter. Hit the QTE counter. They'll go down on the ground. You run over, you pummel them. And then when they get back up, you need to be nowhere near them at all. And for an action game, melee combat action game, that didn't feel good to me. The final boss fight of the base game was really bad. Like just a really bad experience. And then watching the final bosses of the DLC looked awful to me.
I'm trying to remember the final fight of the DLC, because this was my first time this last year playing through it, because just like you, I played it originally, and then I was like, DLC on the main, like that. I didn't even get a chance to do it, so I played it for the first time recently, and that was it. It's definitely harder. The other two DLC bosses are like, I guess not really spoiler, but they're non-canon, I guess technically, the Street Fighter bosses. Those are more difficult for me. Like that shit was hard. Can't even pretend, because it starts you off doing like a 2D Street Fighter fight, which I'm like, this is legitimately difficult. Like I'm not having a good time.
In the Asura's Wrath combat system, no thank you.
Yeah.
Can you put Asura in Street Fighter and like do the opposite? Because then you might be interested in
if it sold more, I think that's what they were planning on. And then they were like, oh,
there's
never
an Asura
mind.
skin somewhere like as a replacement for one of the characters, maybe.
The last DLC boss was like a was like a bullet hell type thing, like 3D bullet
it was
hell,
wild.
which is like not bad in this kind of game where you're running and jumping. Like I can get behind that. But it just takes a long time. And it's one of those where like, you can't go hit the boss all the time. You got to dodge all this stuff perfectly. And then the opportunity, okay, you now have 5 seconds to run up and hit the boss. I hope you're close, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
So the thing I wanted to ask you guys is because we've talked a couple times about how combat situations are set up and the rail shooter situations are the same thing, where the boss fights don't have a health bar that you're draining down. The enemies that you're fighting don't have a limit, where it's not like you destroy all the enemies that come up and once they're all dead, you move on. And then the rail shooter sequences are not like you basically survive and kill enough things to reach the end of the level like rail shooters usually work. It's all based on when the burst gauge is full, then you hit that right trigger and then you're allowed to move on to the next thing. And so I was kind of thinking about this, like mechanically in a boss fight, the burst gauge filling up to the top is not that different from a boss's health bar going down to 0, because once it reaches the end, either end, the same thing happens. You go into the story cutscene. But filling the burst gauge, to me, felt worse than depleting a health bar or killing all the enemies in there. It like disengaged me from the gameplay of it. And I'm just watching that bar and just being like, okay, it's like in the rail shooter section, it's like, okay, I think I'm about halfway through here. I'm just trying to kill enough stuff because you get burst points, the bar fills as you kill stuff. And then in the boss fight, you get burst points that fill up as you do damage to the boss. So I don't know, like I found myself just watching that gauge and not really caring about like, okay, so there's like 500 enemies in this arena right here. I don't really care about like a good way to tactically take them out in the right order or something like that. I'm just going to kill stuff until that thing is up and I can hit that button and move on. Yeah, I don't know. Did this like kind of flip your mindset like that too?
It did, and that's why I understood it just based on, because we talked about how Asura's Wrath is, it's weird, right? It's a different game. It's definitely playing in its own rule set, in its own sandbox. So I was looking at it similar to, I think, what you have here in the notes and what I had thought before. This is not, hey, I'm draining someone's health or I'm killing enough people, but it's just like, how pissed am I getting during this fight? And that's kind of how like my thought process as well was for it. And you've seen that in different animes, you've seen it in different comic books, things like that, to where this person would, like the Hulk, for example, you can like make a comparison to, Marvel's character. It's not that the Hulk just beats up on somebody, but he gets stronger the more pissed he gets. So when you're fighting these big demigods, especially, and you're doing these crazy huge boss fights where if you're thinking about it 1-to-1, a health bar being someone's health, like maybe you can even kind of twist it and say it's their will to fight going down. But generally we see a health bar and that's how much vitality someone has. Like it doesn't make sense that I'm beating up a god or a demigod to the point where like their health is going down. But it's more of like I'm surpassing my limit to the point where I can now like either one shot or damage them to the point where they're tired of fighting me. They're like, no more. Like I will step away from you. So that's what made sense to me while playing through that with the burst meter.
Yeah, I would say that like I'm kind of on the same page as Will here in terms of the burst meter. Like once I realized that this wasn't a game that really was asking me to destroy bosses, like, in the actual like gameplay moments. Of course, you ultimately do that, but it was one of those things. As soon as I got it, like the first couple of times, I was like, this is fine. This is okay. I will say though that, again, similar to what you were saying, Dave, like same thing with like the writing, having an emotional disconnect, maybe just because of the age or just because of the way that the story is laid out. I would say that like my personal investment through getting through gameplay sequences was like more interested in like the weird, cool, funny shit that they were going to throw at me next cutscene versus like, oh, this feels like an accomplishment getting through this gameplay sequence. I was like, oh, like let me pull me through this story, but it wasn't something where I was like, oh yeah, this feels great to like run down a boss or like actually like figure them out like as a puzzle.
Yeah. It never feels great to just basically fight a bunch of things, a bunch of like the Gohma enemies to fill up that bar. And I don't think the boss fights feel great either. So it is what Will said, though. It is like, within the story, it is Asura getting pissed, powering up, so that like when that point when you hit the burst gauge is not because you've defeated all the enemies, it's because Asura is now so mad and therefore so powerful that it doesn't matter what enemies are there anymore. And that it doesn't matter what the boss you were just fighting is doing, because now you're so mad that you can do anything. So like, we joke, we meme about like the Dragon Ball Z episodes where it's like, it's a 22-minute episode and 15 minutes of that is Goku powering up and like the two combatants like staring at each other and yelling as they power up. And instead of doing that in Asura's Wrath, you fight a bunch of stuff. And so like it makes sense within the story and like what you're doing in those sections. Because like, I think Nick, you said the cool part never happens during the fight, during the gameplay sections. The cool part's in the cutscene after it. So it makes sense that you're powering up to do the cool thing in the cutscene. It just, I don't know, something about the psychology of it like got me thinking like, I know this is the same thing mechanically. It's just the bar's going in at the opposite direction. That's all that's happening right now. Yeah. But it got me thinking about it in a different way. And even though it makes sense to me why it is that way.
Gamers never like when you play with the health bar. I feel like that was what the Superman Returns, or like one of those older games where, you're playing as Superman, so you don't have a health bar, but the city has a health bar. And if you protect it was like people, no one was down for that. Everyone was like, I hate this, because, you can't mess with the classic health bar. Like that throws people for a loop.
It just like, especially in those regular fights, the like arena against a bunch of enemy fights, or in the rail shooters sequences, it almost just felt like a timer. I'm watching the timer go and I'm like, it's almost over. Just keep doing what you're doing. It'll be over soon. Like it really felt that way.
Yeah. But what I will say is though, it does give you kind of like how you mentioned, you watched the guy online who was, pretty solid at the game. So it's a positive feedback loop as well as, I guess, a negative if you're not doing well. If you're not doing well and you're not enjoying it and you're getting hit too many times, then it takes you longer to get through because it takes you longer to get your burst meter up. But, if you get quote unquote get good, or just, get a really string of good parries and kills and fights, you can make those combat sequences, go by shorter. Now, obviously, that has something to say was like, yes, I get to fight less. And that kind of tells you what some people feel about the game. But then that takes a little bit of that slog out to where you're like, I'm just waiting for the clock to tick down, because the positive gameplay, or, the better fighting that you do on your end effectively makes it go by quicker and then kind of keeps the pace going better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One thing that does occur, and just kind of as a final thought on this segment, like one thing that does occur to me is this a convention that we have in more modern titles that could have served them well back then. And I don't even know if people were, or developers were using this back then, but if Asura had more of a visual representation, if he had more like engagement and not just being a character that's jumping around the screen, but like if you're seeing his form physically change, or you're hearing him noticeably get more angry or express that he's like actually getting like geared up to be, enter into that burst meter state, I think that would have gone a long way to actually like getting me invested, or getting me in there, like having those little like, soundbite shout outs of like getting hit, or like I'm doing badly this round, or something like that. Just weird, goofy stuff of that could be over the top that might fit well in this game. But again, it's like, it was 2012. We know what we know now.
Yeah, because what happens, when he powers up, he does the, instead of going Super Saiyan, he gets like the 6 arms, and, I think his hair changes color. It gets like bright glowing white and stuff. So maybe if you had like a visual indicator too, instead of just watching that bar. I think that I did manage to like really sum up like why that bothered me more than maybe it should have. And it did just kind of feel like a timer. And when the timer is over, I get to the good part, which is what I'm really here for. All right, so let's get into our kind of wrap-up stuff, our final thoughts here, our recommendations, and then we'll have spoilers upcoming relatively soon. So, We always answer the question, who would you specifically recommend Asura's Wrath to? And it might be kind of an interesting recommendation here. So, Nick, I'll throw to you first. Who do you think should play Asura's Wrath?
I would say any gamer that has an appreciation for Xbox 360 era games and is between the age of 18 and 35 and likes mindless combat and anime screaming and like faces getting smushed in while they're getting punched and, you know, being stabbed through planets. Like, if you like cool shit, this is the game for you. As long as you're okay with stomaching like the weird jank that comes along with it. Yeah.
Yeah, the first part. The first, like, on the bullet point list of recommendations, number 1, do you like cool shit? And number 2, are you willing to sacrifice some things to get cool shit? Like, are you willing to sacrifice an engaging combat system to see cool shit? If you are, Asura's Wrath might be for you.
That's it. That's the one.
Will, do you have anything to add on to that?
I would say, just to expand more with Nick's initial one, saying, you know, like those weird 360 games. Like, if you like weird games in general, like I'm a fan of weird games. I tell people, go on to PlayStation, give Sony your money, and play Mr. Mosquito. You know, go play some weird games. And this is a weird game. Is it the weirdest game? Obviously not. That being said, it takes so many weird little risks, and I feel like it's interesting enough to warrant all of the hype and the cult following that it's garnered over the years. So yeah, if you want something different, if you're the kind of person that comes on to different chat rooms and discords and you say, oh, all games sucks now, you know, everything's just trash and it's all copy paste, try something new. Go pick up Asura's Wrath.
Yeah. So we'll add that on. Do you like cool shit? Are you willing to sacrifice some stuff to see cool shit? And do you like new things? Like, there's nothing else I've ever played that's even remotely similar to Asura's Wrath.
Right.
Whether it be structure or, you know, even like the spectacle that you see is kind of unmatched, I think. So I think that's it. If you like anime, that's a plus, because you'll probably be more in tune with some of the character archetypes and stuff like that. But I don't think that's necessary, because I wouldn't consider myself a giant fan, and I got on just fine with the story. I mean, the characters are mostly not good. They're mostly just one personality trait turned into a character, but
I mean, to be fair, hey. Kind of on purpose.
Yeah, right. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, it's a cool game, and it's something that, like, there's qualifiers, I guess. Like, if you need an action game to be like really mechanically fun as an action game, then I don't think this is going to do it for you. But like, I know people who are big, like, they care deeply about action game mechanics, and even they are like, we give Asura's Wrath a pass. It's just fucking cool. It's a cool experience.
Yeah.
So, pretty good recommendations for all of us then. So let's do our housekeeping. We always start with plugs. And as I said at the top of the show, Nick and Will are the hosts of Friday Night Gamecast. So guys, please tell everyone about the show and where they can find you.
Absolutely. So Friday Night Gamecast, we are a variety games podcast. We focus on reviewing and covering games not dissimilar to Tales from the Backlog. And we generally lean towards focusing on a little bit more current titles. We do generally pivot towards AA to AAA experiences as they come out through the year. William and I love playing like most of the games that will show up at the Game Awards and kind of seeing where does this actually end up on our own personal lists, that sort of thing. So if you enjoy those type of thoughtful discussions and a little bit of humor between young William and I to kind of discuss like what is good and what's happening in the games industry today, you can feel free to check that out. Dave, you most recently joined us on the podcast with Sam Haney when we reviewed Metaphor Refantasio last year. Yeah. That was a great one and an absolute recommendation if you want to jump into that. And most recently, we also have a game that Will and I played and we discussed and we reviewed together, Coffee Talk episodes 1 and 2 with good friends of the show, Kate and Emily of No Small Games. So so we got a little bit of indie, a little bit of everything that you can kind of check out there. But yeah, find us on all podcasting platforms. We are Friday Night Gamecast. And if you want to find us and talk with us over on Blue Sky, we're at FNGC Pod over there.
Yep.
Very good.
Friday Night Gamecast on Instagram as well. So definitely give us a shout out. Jump in the DMs, like some pictures, and have a great time with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good show. Like I say, every time you guys are on here, worth people's time. And I think that like the conversation that we've had here on this show is pretty representative of the type of conversations on Friday Night Gamecast as well. So I will recommend that people go check it out. There's a lot of stuff, even stuff that I'm not involved in. You'll find a lot of good game discussions over there. Yeah. So down in the show notes, you'll find a link to Friday Night Gamecast, and please go check it out. Maybe as the spoiler break music is playing, go find some episodes to queue up. And I did most of my plugs at the top of the show, so I will just shout out the Discord server now. If you've enjoyed the conversation so far, please continue it with us on Discord. There's an invite link in the show notes, and you can come and talk about Asura's Wrath, but we're also a lively community of people in there chatting about stuff basically throughout every day. We're an active place, a lot of friendly folks in there, and we'd like to have you too. So feel free to join. Invite link down in the show notes, as I said. Now, I'm going to catch my breath during the spoiler break. When we come back after the music break, it will be full spoiler time for Asura's Wrath. All right, before we get to full spoiler time for Asura's Wrath, I've got one guest appearance to let you know about and the customary thank yous. So, a reminder that all throughout November and December, you can find me on the Geeks and Grounds podcast as we go through Final Fantasy X, talk about the story, analyze its themes, and much more. We are halfway through that series, so you can find that on the Geeks and Grounds podcast and look forward to the second half in December. And I'd like to say thank you to the wonderful patrons who support me on Patreon. A big thank you and shout out goes out to Chris Nelson, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Ficori, Soccer, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Jenny E., Marcus O'Neill, Stefan, Drellish, Rigamort, Silk Canet, Levi, John E., Aliasi, Joseph Hooper, Yorkie Duval, Aaron, Squill, Alan Kress, Doug T., Retro Overdrive, One of Many Tots, Magic Crow, and many more. Thank you all so much for your support. It means a lot to me, and it is genuinely a great help, more than you know. So, thank you again. If anyone out there would like to join them, support the work that I do, and feel all warm and fuzzy inside, you can do that at patreon.com/realdavejackson. Now, with that being said, let's get back to full spoiler time for Asura's Wrath. All right, we're back. It's full spoiler time for Asura's Wrath. And as always, it's not going to be a linear walk through the story. We're going to spoil something that happens about halfway through really quickly. And then if we go on to talk about the ending from there, that's how it goes. So if you haven't finished the game, if you're halfway through or something like that, please come back when you're done because we don't go in order. So I figured a good way to kick the spoiler section off would be to talk about some of those hype moments we talked about in the non-spoiler part of the episode. And there were two that I wrote down. The first one is the first boss that you fight, and then the second one is the one that everyone talks about. So just real quick, the first one that you fight, because right? You're going to fight all these demigods one at a time. You're going to just make your way through the Pantheon and kill all of them. And that's mostly what happens. But the first one is Wyzen, who's like this big fat guy. I think it's the first one you fight.
Yep, it's the first real boss, yeah.
And his thing is during the fight, he sucks in the mantra that he can, and he grows up to the size of, he's basically bigger than the Earth. Like the Earth is like the size of his stomach or something like that. And you're fighting him, and he decides, all right, it's time to squash this bug. And so he like absorbs the energy. He grows up to this huge size. He takes his index finger and like goes down to smash Asura like he's an ant. Mm-hmm. And Asura grabs his finger, holds it up as he's like being pushed down into the ground, Dragon Ball style. And just through the power of pure rage, he pushes back in a way that like superheats his hand and it burns him to death, even though he's the size of the solar system or something.
It's even better.
Yeah.
He's getting pushed down and he decides he's done being pushed. So he, with his multi-arms at that point, I think he has the 6 arms, not 4. He starts punching. And like as he's punching back up to, that's how you push something off you. You just strike it as many times and it backs up.
In Resident Evil 5, that taught us that's how you get a boulder out of the way.
Baby.
You punch
exactly.
it.
Capcom, same people. Same people.
Every Gurren Lagann fan knows that the only way to go is up.
There you go. You got to drill through the heavens. So he's punching multiple times, and every couple of seconds, like one of his arms breaks. So it gets like super dramatic, like shatters one arm, shatters one arm, shatters one arm. He has the last arm, and of course, time has to like stop, so he can sit there and aura farm a little bit. And he's like looking at his hand and like really gauges up a punch, puts as much power as into it possible, and then punches the finger with his last remaining arm so hard that, like you said, it superheats through. It's like he hit a weak point. It's like he hit a chakra point, and it shatters Wyzen, even though he's, much, much larger than the Earth, which is hilarious because Wyzen used so much mantra to make that happen to still get his ass whooped that he like drastically drained the amount of mantra that the other demigods could use throughout the rest of the game. So
because it's a finite resource.
Correct.
And yeah, I remember the rest of the demigods were like pissed that he used so much of it doing this.
They clown him so bad in like the epilogue. There was like, oh, look, he used that much and still got his ass whooped.
Yeah. Yep. It's funny in like so many of these fights, Asura like at some point in the fight will power up and he'll go into like that 4 or 6 armed mode, and he'll always get those extra arms like broken off. Like most of the fights end with him being armless, like totally armless, and you like there's a bunch of parts where you like headbutt shit to death because that's all you have.
Yep, including that after this fight too. It goes in part with the story, but yeah, the part after the Wyzen fight when you finally beat him, and then you're sitting there with no arms at the very end, and then you're like, okay, cool. Obviously, this is the end of the episode. My arms are all broken. I got to start something else new, and it's like, do I got to fight somebody else with no arms?
Yeah.
Yeah, I also love just how physics just absolutely doesn't apply to this Earth. I think we said that this is not really the Earth as we know it. This is an Earth Prime, but this is a version, a representation of Earth. But like, if you have a celestial body that is that close to the planet, like sheer physics, like nothing is surviving, even the proximity, let alone that a finger the size of the continent is going to be pushing down. I love it. It's my favorite thing ever.
Yeah, it's the best. And so speaking of the best, the other one that I wrote down that like it didn't fit neatly into another section, but it is like the best part of the game, I think, is the fight with August. But before that, that hot spring scene is right before that fight. So like Asura and August, they I forget their relation. There's a familial relation to them. Like they're not just like the demigods.
August is his teacher. He was his
teacher,
original like master, I think. Yeah.
Right. So there's this, I mean, that's like the most anime fucking thing ever, like the student facing off against the master.
Correct.
Right? But
that's exactly what it is.
That's what's going to happen. And they both know it's going to happen. And Asura's like, fine, all right, let's fight. I'm going to kick your ass. And August is like, no, we're not fighting yet. We're going to chill in the hot spring first. And so you have this scene. I put a screenshot in the notes doc here in case anyone forgot. You have this scene where August and Asura are in this hot spring. You're in first person, and they're both being attended to by these like girls in bikinis or whatever. And you have these like prompts. You press B to drink because you have a bunch of booze. You press Y to chug your drink. You press X to splash water on the girls, and then you press A to stand up. And you can like walk over. And if I remember right, August will like punch you in the face if you try to do this before it's time to like finish the scene, like before he's done. Like he'll slap you and you have to go sit down or something like that. I think I remember that.
I feel like it's something like that, but even funnier is like the first time, or I think maybe whenever you stand up, how like the person attending you, the lady attending you, she like looks shocked because you're in a hot spring. So you're naked.
Oh, yeah.
Under
Right.
the water. So you like stand up like right in her face. And she's like, oh. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Do you think
Come
Asura
on.
has 6 mechanical dicks too? Just like his arms?
1000%. He has to.
Is he an
has
echidna?
to. Canonically.
And so anyway, you drink, you splash water, you do what you got to do. All of this fills the burst gauge, just like combat. And then there's this great, what I took the screenshot of is it has the prompt to press right trigger to burst as this like girl in a bikini standing in front of you. And that's what you do. That is like a chapter of the game is just this hot spring thing. It's super awkward. Asura doesn't want to be there. It's very weird, but it's very 2012 as well.
2012.
Yeah. It's one of those scenes where, you know, you're sitting there playing a game, maybe your significant other, or worse in 2012, like your parent is just like in the background or watching you or something. And
Walks
then,
into the
know,
room and is like, I thought you were playing an action game. What the hell is this?
I am.
Yeah.
Wait, they're going to fight. I promise they're going to fight. Let me splash her some more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I got to hurry up and splash her more so that we can get to the fight. Yeah. So the fight with August is on the moon, which is awesome.
Incredible.
So visually it's cool. And like the first section of the fight is cool. This was the first fight that I had a lot of like trouble with. Like I had to basically run to the other side of the combat arena to dodge the attacks that are coming in time.
Yep.
And then there's the one that you can do the counter for. And the time I beat him, you know, it took me 2 or 3 tries. The time I won, I hit all the counters. That's why I won, which, you know, is not too dissimilar from like the time I beat the final boss in Lies of P is because I did really well countering. Like it's what some of these games are, but it was the first fight where I was like, this combat system's kind of straining. Like this doesn't feel good anymore, but luckily once you're done, you get to go to the coolest fucking hype moment in the game. So do one of you guys want to take this one for the play-by-play for the people at home who didn't play this?
This is all you, Will.
Oh, of course, of course. So after you've been fighting August for a while, he decides that now is the time for him to pull out his secret weapon, his gigantic katana, I believe it is, the Wailing Dark. So this is one of those classic anime moments where it's like this blade, you know, once unsheathed, no one's ever seen it sheathed. You know, like he effectively says he kills anyone who uses it. The only people that have seen him use that blade and live to tell the tale is Deus.
Right.
And I think one other person.
The top one, Deus.
Yeah,
and,
you know, like the final boss, you know, the big bad. And I think maybe there's one other, but you know, now Asura is the one. He's like, all right, I'm going to kill you effectively by pulling this blade out. Mm-hmm. So not only does he start...
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know what we mean when we say a gigantic katana, it's not gigantic as in like the Buster Sword, like wide gigantic. It's the length of the sword goes from the moon to the earth.
Yeah, it's Sephiroth. It's Sephiroth long katana. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here. So before he even starts, you know, attacking you and putting each other, he slices the moon like in half. So then you have the permanently like off kilter moon, which funny enough, if you play the Street Fighter DLC, this takes place after that because you go to the moon to fight again and then you fix the moon. Or I think Ryu, who's in his dark form, fixes the moon by kicking it so hard that it goes back to being normal again. So
amazing.
You know, you got to have that.
There's a DLC thing where someone throws the moon at someone else. Like the final boss of the DLC throws the moon at Asura. And then throws the sun at him too, I think.
Yeah, when you're fighting the very, very final boss, he's throwing different like stars, planets, and things at you. So it gets over the top.
Insanity.
But with August, he slices the moon in half, and then eventually, after fighting him with the sword for a little bit, he pierces you in the gut, and you're trying to like hold it on, but you get picked up off your feet and then pushed through space all the way down to Earth. And the blade just looks like it's lengthening more and more as you're getting pushed down to Earth. So at one point, it's, you know, hundreds of kilometers long, this blade, until eventually you hit the ground with all your arms like breaking off in the process of re-entering Earth. And then the blade continues through you, through the other side of the planet. Yep. You see magma shoot out the backside of the planet as this blade pierces through. The whole time August is talking shit. Like he's yelling at you while he's riding, you know, his blade down through your abs. And you're sitting there tapping QTEs to like get yourself to will to fight. And eventually you punch his blade right as he's coming down, like with the hilt near you. So you punch and destroy his super cool, crazy katana, and he drops it. You jump up and catch it in midair in your teeth.
Yep.
In your teeth.
Yeah.
To then
Like
in
Zoro
one
himself.
fell swoop, just like Zoro, in one fell swoop, then you slice through August's stomach with the broken blade, that's in your mouth. And I'm just sitting here like, this is peak. This is cinema right here.
Yeah. That's the one of those times when you're just like, I can't believe someone thought to, we're not only going to like go through the atmosphere and have him pinned into the ground with this sword, but the sword's going to go through the entire earth and poke out the other side. And then we're going to do this ending where he holds it in his teeth and kills him. Like, it's
Skewering
just
the earth was 100% necessary, by the way. That
Yeah.
was that
Had to.
needed to happen.
absolutely. Yeah. I would have returned this shit if it didn't spear through the other side of the planet. Yeah.
Like, where's the blade?
It's so cool. This like the first one with Wizen was kind of like a warm up, and this one is the one. And like the scale of things gets to this size again, where you're dealing with things that are bigger than planets and stuff, like the big or I wrote the word down later, I cannot remember it. But the big, the man in the sky, the galaxy brain guy from the memes, he's out in the sky.
Chakra Vartan. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you get to that scale again, but I don't think you ever get to something that's nearly as cool as this again, which is not to say that like there's not cool stuff. It's just like, this is the coolest idea they had. It just happens to be in the middle of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only thing I would think is as cool, and that's from me liking anime and specifically Gurren Lagann, is I think the ending, like the very, very end, true end after past the DLC, is super cool. But I just love like when things get so bombastic and crazy and large and big, and then how does it end? Fist fight. It just ends in a classic, knockdown, brawl out fist fight.
Yeah. The end of the DLC when it's called the Chakra Vartan is like the ultimate god. It's got all of like the Hindu iconography, all the arms and legs and stuff like that. And yeah, the way you beat it is Asura just punches it in the face really fucking hard.
You just gotta punch
to
harder.
kill it. Yeah. And that's how you kill, I think that's how you kill Vlitra at the end too. Is you go like into its heart and just punch the shit out of it. Because this is, it's Yakuza rules too, right? That's how you beat anything or solve any problem, is by punching something or someone in the face. So
60% of the time, every time.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, Vlitra's design when he's in the Earth's core, 100% Naruto's final form.
Yeah,
when he's like in his
real?
fox form. Yes, 100. Like during the adult era, it's just Naruto that you're fighting at the end of this game, which is great.
Okay, right on. So like the part when you go inside and you fight like the heart or whatever it is,
the manifestation of the Vlitra's core. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's a good segue to talk about the Gohma and the kind of like the story of like what's actually going on in parallel to the revenge story in Asura's Wrath. I actually think this is like pretty interesting.
Agreed.
So we said in the non-spoiler part, the Gohma are these enemies that you fight throughout the game. They're like this scourge, basically. They come out of nowhere. They seemingly like come out of the ground and they kill people. And it's like this never-ending thing. It's this forever war that the Gohma and the Demigods, basically, that are then there to protect the people from the Gohma. And it's this never-ending thing. Like, anytime the Demigods kill big Gohma things, a bigger one comes up. And Vlitra is like the ultimate, like, biggest one. And like, even in the beginning of the game, Vlitra is so big that like, if you can imagine, destroying it would like destroy half or more of the planet. It's like, it's basically like not worth it. And this is one of those cool things that I read in the lore notes, is the game just straight up tells you Gohma are the Earth's natural defenses against the demigods. Yeah. So the Earth views the demigods as something that needs to be, wiped out. And the Gohma are the way that it does this. And we didn't say in the non-spoiler part, the Gohma that you fight are all animals. They're all gorillas and spiders and elephants. And like there's a big tortoise one. They're all animals. So it's like, it's not that hard to piece together, especially once you read that like you're not defending the people from the Gohma. The earth is defending itself from you via the Gohma. And then that recontextualizes like this basically like it's almost like a tragedy where like the demigods either don't know that this is the case and they're just making things worse, or they do know and they're just like profiting off of it basically. So I was never clear on like whether the demigods really knew that they were never going to defeat the Gohma. Destroying the earth is the only way to.
I think like the way that I interpreted it, and Will, feel free to step in if you think I'm wrong here, but I feel that if anybody did know that they were obviously the ones that were in the wrong, it was Deus. I think like Deus makes it pretty clear throughout the story that, at a certain point, like he made promises to the rest of the demigods, like, yes, this is for you. This is to, create your eternal life and your eternal kingdom. And this is going to give you, if we go down this course of events, this is going to give you ultimate power to, of course, live for eternity, when the reality is that he is purely just trying to consume and create and consolidate power all for himself. And I think that it's a pretty clear motivation on their part, that for the fact is that like the only thing that is standing in their way as a threat for them to go against and as the threat for the people to revere them as gods is to just obviously decimate and destroy the Gohma, which definitely ties again into this idea of the Eightfold Path and like this cycle, the cyclical, like eternal nature of what is actually happening in context to like why these demigods are here and who and Chakravartin, who is behind the scenes and of course manipulating everything that you see from the background as the Golden Spider.
And I think additionally maybe Emperor Strata as well understood, not necessarily going along with, because I think that's the main reason why he was killed by Deus is, hey, we're not going to fight Vlitra anymore, right? Because he came to the understanding that, it is a cycle. We're going to continue to fight Vlitra. Vlitra's going to get stronger. It's never going to stop. But if we don't fight Vlitra, if we don't attack these Gohma and cause issues on Earth, that should slow down what's going on here and then, hopefully make things kind of peaceful for everybody. But Deus wasn't having that. He wasn't ready to relinquish that power and give up that mantra that they had been accumulating.
What I had wondered, though, is like, so there is definitely that read of it that like the Emperor told Deus, this is why we're not doing it. And Deus saw a way to capitalize on it by killing the Emperor and then like basically propagating this lie and this, so many stories about religion, right? Like the heads of the religion propagate this lie to keep people believing and supporting them. Instead of, paying money in this case, it's paying with their life essence. That's what mantra is the life essence from the living people. But the other way that I kind of saw that would be that the reason that Deus told everyone that he killed the Emperor was because he was weak and he was holding us back. And if it was just like, if the Emperor told Deus, no, we're not fighting Vlitra, but also, no, I'm not telling you why, then he would kill the Emperor because he's like, well, he's crazy. And then once he got a little taste of power, then it became, let's become our ultimate versions. Either way, Deus takes control and like basically like turbocharges this like mantra gathering operation from all the people. 'Cause like the way that it worked, the way I understood it is they had like a pretty sweet deal going on from their perspective where like the Gohma would show up, they'd kill some people, the demigods would show up, they'd kill the Gohma, and the people would be like, thank you for coming in and saving the rest of us. And they just take the mantra from the dead people and, go on their way with their new power. And then like later on in the game, they just go like kill entire villages by themselves. They just skip the middleman. Yeah. And the people, the most devout people are like, yeah, please take me. Like, this is the most noble thing that we can do is to give our life force to you all. Which is, it's not like the deepest criticism of religion, but it's interesting for sure. And it's more interesting than I like expected from this.
There's another part of that too, is they also gain mantra through, prayer to them. Like the prayer from the humans also comes, but it's a lesser extent. It's that Monsters Inc. situation where it's like screams versus laughter, right? And they're like, okay, well, we can have them pray to us, and that can be through multiple ways, either saving them from the Gohma or slaughtering humans in front of them and then getting that fear, that prayer through fear. They were like, but ultimately killing them gives us more faster, so why not do that? I'm just shocked the population of that planet is still around after that many years of them deciding that killing is right, because they were slaughtering people.
Yeah, so like, because they live in like this space station up in space, right?
Right.
You don't ever see like a city. You see like little like mountainside villages that have like 45 people in them. So like, you're right. Like, it must just be like little pocket. Maybe that's why they start getting more desperate with it and start like getting more direct with it, is because like, if there was, New York City or whatever, or like, ancient, I don't know, Rome or some shit, like that would have been wiped out a long, long time ago. So
like the
maybe
first
now,
cutscene of the game when Vlitra first comes out. Yeah.
It was like, oh yeah, Vlitra like erupted out, and it was like, oh yeah, that was all of Europe, so that's gone now, and all those people are gone now. So yeah, maybe that's why they get more direct with it and just show up and start killing villages themselves, because the way that it used to happen kind of naturally, that just like it can't happen that way anymore, because there's like 200 people left on the planet. So what they're doing is they're trying to gather as much mantra as they can from human souls for something that they call the Great Purification, that they say is going to kill everything on Earth, but give them unlimited mantra because of it. So that's the big plan, that like Asura and Yasha eventually are on board to stop, but it really starts with saving Asura's daughter, because she's not just his daughter. She's also like a medium for the mantra. Like she can channel it in a way that makes it, amplifies it. That's a good way to put it. That makes it like usable and more powerful for the deity. So that's why they kidnapped her, is because she has this power. Let's talk about Asura's revenge then. So he's on the path to try and, rescue Mithra. Because when you find her, she's like basically tied up in all these wires and machines and stuff like that. That's basically just using her to amplify all of this stuff. One thing that happens in the beginning that I kind of forgot about, because it's not a character throughout the entire thing, but that golden spider that finds Asura when he's dead and kind of like pushes him back up and be like, hey, no, get pissed, go up there and show them that you mean business or whatever. That's actually the ultimate antagonist of the game, is this golden spider that's manipulating Asura to kill the demigods for its own purposes. It's like a Machiavellian type character, kind of just moving pieces in the background, and then only shows up at the end when basically everyone else is dead.
Yep. God, and the way he shows up too is so annoying, because you have that one character, Olga, who had been like kind of dogging you through the back half of the game, another one of the deities. And then, she has your daughter dead to rights. She's like, all right, you killed Deus, but I'm going to kill your daughter now. You will now taste, I can't remember the quote exactly, but it's like, you're going to taste the pain of loss that I feel. Like this whole thing wasn't kicked off by someone's wife getting murdered, but whatever.
No big deal.
And then she just gets wrapped up in thread, and you're just like, what the hell's going on? Gets killed, and the spider's like, I was the bad guy the whole time. Which, I mean, part of you is like, well, duh, you only showed up when I was dead, and you kept telling me to move forward. So I'm like, you weren't a good guy. I knew that. But I also didn't think you were going to be the kill the second to last boss and then possess my daughter kind of bad guy. But that's what happened in the base end of the game, at least.
I had completely forgotten about the golden spider until the end of the base game, because it had been hours since I last saw it. I mean, like it didn't quote come out of nowhere, but it kind of did.
Agreed.
So I would have been happy without the DLC storyline, although the ending, like the final ending is real weird. And I think it's kind of cool, but the Golden Spider thing, I think we could have just cut that entire thing out. And I don't think the story would have lost a set piece that I thought was awesome in the DLC. But other than that, like, I think the meat of what I think is cool about the story is in the base game.
Do you think that, like, if Deus was actually the final boss of this game, you would have been satisfied with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I need that DLC, even though it's crappy that it was put in there. The items of the DLC that include Asura and Yasha, I think were really, really great. So, like, if I didn't get those ultimately.
The flashback, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the flashback was good because it does helps you understand like who they were before all this started. Yasha is Durga's brother, I want to say.
Yeah, it's his brother-in-law.
Yeah. So they have a long history for sure.
Yeah,
There's
the bro fist bump. I love the bro fist bump so much.
Yeah, you get a QTE to do the fist bump. Like you move the right stick to do the fist bump. That was good. Speaking of QTEs, I forgot to mention this, but I love the QTE to press B to shut the boss up. That's monologue.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
the best.
one. Yeah.
The best. How often did you do that, Dave? Did you let him speak? Did you let him?
I let him go for a minute, but I always eventually pressed it. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to. You have to.
Asura's not going to sit through like
a monologue.
A 2-minute monologue.
No, absolutely not.
I probably waited longer than he would.
Mm-hmm.
There's another storyline like through the revenge tale. So there's like two parts of this. There's a part of it where like Asura's trying to figure out a way that he can like not be so angry because, you know, it gives him his power, but it's destructive and it's probably not very fun. And then there's a storyline with this little girl, and the girl is kind of like a surrogate. It's, you know, how many, like The Last of Us, you know, the main character loses a child and then is given an opportunity to take care of another child or something like that. And this game has that storyline too with that girl. The girl, though, also ties into that religion, which I think is cool because as Asura is growing more fond of her, she's getting disillusioned with the religion. And like, she doesn't have a lot of lines or anything like that. But I thought this storyline was like really simple, but because it ties into both of the main storylines and she's not just like a little kid that just like looks cute, but never says or does anything, I thought it was like pretty good, like worthwhile to see these cutscenes and to have this character here.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. And it's something that is interesting. Like we talk about, you know, Asura being a rage monster for 99.9% of this game.
Yeah.
But something that Will did justifiably point out to me is that, like you said, he is questioning the necessity of like, will anything quell my rage? Like, will I be able to manage this? Will I be able to mitigate this at a certain point? Because when you like look at it in the very beginning of the game, these are questions that he had been asking himself before, you know, the betrayal even happened. Of course, like he didn't really have a great relationship with his daughter Mithra because he didn't know how to take care of a crying baby, because the only thing that he actually knew how to do was fight and break people. Right,
angry.
that was that was his motivation. That was like what he did. Right. So how do you balance that and become a father, or become a father figure in this case? And I think what does make that, and I agree with you again, Dave, what makes the daughter like this, the secondary like kind of child that comes into his life, that's a, you know, member of the village that finds him ultimately so he can get out of his, you know, whatever 10 million year coma or whatever he was trapped in the rock there, it was the fact that, like you said, she's seeing all the destruction that is caused at you know, by these demigods at the hands of the actions that the demigods choose, and she has this weird attachment to Asura because she believes that he is going to save her, that he is going to be the way that she will make it out of the situation, because she understands how dire it is in the environment that she's surrounded by. But then every time she, you know, follows like Asura, he almost has no regard for her whatsoever, and his whole sole focus is on either destroying the Gohma or destroying the demigods, and like that's really the long and short of it for him.
For a little bit, but he grows a little bit more attached to her as it goes. To the point where like there's that part in the game where like, this is a weird thing that happens. Like there's a couple chapter stretch where like you don't play as Asura at all because he gets so mad when the girl dies, he goes into this uncontrollable like demon state, and you play as Yasha for like 2 hours of the game.
Yeah.
Because he's so mad because Olga killed the girl. There's a cool part. I wish I like saved a screenshot or a video of this, but when the girl gets hit by this attack that kills her and she screams, the picture goes black and white. And it's just like a really cool visual thing that they did. Mm-hmm. And then Asura just fucking like, he does the ultimate attack that like shoots pillars of energy up into space and like destroys a whole fleet of spaceships. And then, but he's like so mad he can't come back from it.
Yep.
And I think they bring him back from it by beating the shit out of him. Will, am I remembering that right?
Yeah. So Yasha beats him up a bit and does it. Initially, he gets hit by the guy. Is it the Brahmastra cannon from the Karma Fortress?
Right. The Brahmastra is the big guy, the big galaxy brain guy.
Yep. So they go to use that because Olga's like, oh, this guy's pissed. So they try to use, once again, thousands and thousands, if not potentially millions of mantra to like one shot him, who he tries to tank it with his own beam. Very anime, a beam struggle. It's got to be happening.
Oh, yeah.
And then during that whole time, Yasha's trying to like stop the beam from going off and killing Asura. So he ends up kicking the cannon so hard that it's like slightly moves off center and doesn't kill Asura. So he's just like knocked out, but he's, instead of like glowing red and crazy, he's all like dark black. Comes back, kills the guy. And then from there, Yasha and Asura have to like fight each other when Asura's in that rage mode. And he literally beats sense into him.
Yeah.
So the storyline with the girl, pretty good. It accomplishes the goals. Mm-hmm. But what we do learn, it's kind of interesting in the DLC, we learn why Asura is so angry. And it's because all of the deities are powered by a specific part of the power of the mantra. It's like split into, there's 8 deities, I guess. So there's 8 different, things. And the one that's powering Asura is wrath. So that's why Asura is so angry. It's because like that is, if you boil his nature down to one thing, it's wrath. So that's why he's so angry. So we have these 2 storylines that come together in kind of cool ways. The deity or the demigods versus the Gohma. The Gohma will exist as long as the demigods all exist. Mm-hmm. And then we have this anger for Asura, which as long as he exists, he will be angry because that's what he's made of, basically. It goes beyond like nature versus, well, I guess it's like pure nature. There is no overcoming it because it's like, it's what he is. So there's only one way for this really to end, and that's for all the demigods, including Asura, to go. They all have to disappear, basically. And Asura kills most of them. I think you kill 6 of them, 7, including if he just allows himself to die. Yeah. Olga gets killed by the golden spider. But
I guess technically Yasha doesn't die from Asura. He allows himself to die. Yeah.
Right. So 6 of them Asura kills, if you count himself in there.
Yeah.
But that's basically like what has to happen. And so Asura does end up rescuing Mithra, but then he has to go in order for there to ever be peace.
Yep.
So that's the resolution for the whole thing.
Yeah, it has that beautiful line at the end. I love that so much, where he's sacrificing himself, during the fight with the final boss. When, she gets stopped in the middle of a QTE by Mithra, and she's like, no, if you do this, it's going to get rid of all the mantra, and then you're going to disappear. But you'll live. And then he just goes and does what he's supposed to do. I'm like, oh, he learned how to be a good dad.
Yeah.
You leave your daughter an orphan. That's how you do it.
Oh no. The DLC storyline is mostly about the god Chakravartin, now that all the demigods are dead, except for Asura, basically. It wants to like remake the earth and choose a successor for itself. And it's kind of like a weird, dumb storyline because like Asura just doesn't give a shit about this. It's like the Chakravartin the whole time is like, I am appointing you as my successor. And Asura's like, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not interested. And it's like, they have like 10 versions of that conversation until you finally kill it at the end.
Yeah. It's 100% an interesting. I mean, it is interesting because to the extent of them trying to tie in the idea of reincarnation, that we've gone through this multiple times. Like, this has happened before. It will continue to happen again. And Chakravartin has made the Earth who knows how many times and has played this game. And it's kind of like similarly, if anybody has seen the new Fantastic Four movie with Galactus, spoiler alerts for Fantastic Four, but Galactus is looking for a successor, and there's a certain character in Fantastic Four who is the named successor for him being able to devour the universe. And that's like the same idea that you have presented here, where it's like he's tired, he wants to go spin off and create his own thing, and this is where where Asura comes into play. And this was the whole kind of like plot all along, like why he was manipulated from the start was that he saw the potential in Asura as being the potential a good successor for him, and that's why like the story played out the way it did.
Yeah, there's a part where just read this in my notes and remembered it and cracked up. There's a part where Chakravartin like reaches to shake Asura's hand, is like, shake my hand, agree to the terms to become the new god. And Asura like kind of goes as if he's going to do it, but then he just punches him in the face.
Yeah, it's good.
Extremely on brand.
Slow-mo, like, ooh.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, there's a lot of
exactly
like
what Nick was saying. Oh, go ahead.
Slow-mo punches, teeth cracking, like stuff like that in this game. And then the line, I remember the line from checking further down in the notes. When Asura throws the killing blow at Chakravartin, he says, above all, he's going through all this shit. Why I'm so angry, all this shit that you've done. Above all else, I'll never forgive you for making my daughter cry. And then he lands the final punch. Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's how it goes. Yeah. I'll never forgive you.
Yeah. And so then that allows the demigods and everyone to disappear, which then we think allows the Gohma to disappear. And yeah, we have peace.
Then you reach nirvana.
For now, because we have the ending, which is 870 million years later.
Oh yeah,
boy.
It's too long. It's too much time. 870 million years? Are you fucking kidding me?
Just a random number. They just said random number generator, go.
I don't know why this.
We had to go back to the Cretaceous period. We had to go back to microbiology.
Yeah, this is pre-dinosaurs. This is like trilobites and shit, which is apparently when this game took place. I don't know why that broke me. So I laughed out loud, and I can't keep it together during the recording. 870 million years later, after the events of Asura's Wrath, we're in the modern day. Yep. We're in New York City or a city like it. First of all, the Statue of Liberty looks like Asura, which is just goofy as hell.
Hilarious.
Sick.
And there are people around the city. It's like flashing you around the city. And there's people that look like the demigods. They're just being assholes to everybody. And there's a family, and the dad is clearly Asura reborn. And you first see him punching a guy on the street. That's how you're introduced to the modern version of him.
Punching reincarnated Wizen because he bumped into his daughter.
Yeah. It was like kind of interesting to think like, so like not in a Christian way, but like the faults and the sins of these demigods like are reincarnated and they live on in new people. I'm not sure if it's everybody or if it's just like 8 specific strangers in New York City got these qualities, which would be a very funny sitcom. I'm up for that. But yeah, this is the ending. What did you guys think of this ending in the modern day?
That was
I loved it so much, Dave.
You get Chun-Li arresting or trying to arrest old Carlo, who's riding on what the hell is that damn thing called? Oh God, what is that little thing with like the big scooter that people ride around for?
Like a moped? Yeah.
No, God. Oh, I don't know why the hell the S word. It's throwing me off. But anyway, his thing was sloth, right? He's being lazy. So instead of running away from the cops, he's like riding what are those little scooter things
Segway?
that people do? Segway. That's exactly what it is.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Yeah, he's like running from the cops on a Segway. I'm like, this is insane. I love it so much. August just being like harassed by random people and like barely containing his like rage, just like little veins popping out of his forehead.
Yeah, anger management, the video game, is great, and I would. I think it would be my favorite. I would literally pay money for this, Dave, if the sequel to Asura's Wrath was just a Yakuza job classification minigame of each of these deities trying to figure out how they're gonna like have a sustainable living. Inflation's really high right now. We have to make sure we can get groceries. Like, I would love it. That's really what I need.
Yeah, what is Olga gonna do in the modern socio-political climate we find ourselves in? How's she gonna survive?
100% 7-Eleven Combini clerk.
Yeah, this was this is crazy. And then I don't know why it is this thing is just so goofy. This ending is so goofy that yeah, it just really makes me laugh. The end, there's a meteor coming that's about to hit the city, and the guy that looks like Asura, he's just dressed like a normal dude. Mm-hmm. He's not buffed up. He only has 2 arms. You know, he's just a guy, but he looks like Asura. He's mad. And he looks up at the meteor and gets ready to fight it. And that's where it cuts.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it says to be continued, which
it was not continued.
RIP in peace. It was not continued, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the world is a little bit of a darker, a little bit sadder place that we didn't get an Asura's Wrath 2 to see what that was. My understanding is that the DLC was actually meant to be the sequel. It was like the ideas that were presented in the DLC were supposed to be stretched out over the course of a full game, for Asura's Wrath 2, but they were like, Capcom saw the funding when the first one launched. And funny enough, it's interesting. Again, I know I'm a little bit long-winded on like the backstory of like the development of this game.
No, dude, I love it. It's good.
Yeah, like something that like happened when Asura's Wrath initially launched was they had projections of how they wanted this game to sell and how they wanted to market it. And the way that Capcom originally chose to market it was not through normal like billboard advertisements or like kind of making a push through like GameStop and like, you know, putting, you know, doing like the normal rounds in Game Informer, that sort of thing. How we all found out about, you know, new games back in the day. They were like, we want to only do physical media advertisements through like magazines. We wanted to do magazine publications, and then we wanted to do anime TV spots for like anime in Japan, and nobody had access to that. So first of all, it was a huge marketing issue, and then second of all, in Europe at the time, Game Corp, which is actually like the GameStop, like, you know, analogous, the corporation that, you know, distributes games in the UK, they had a lapse in business insurance in 2012, around the same release window when Asura's Wrath was supposed to come out. The UK was the other big market that Capcom was really banking on for people to consume this game. And so when this game dropped, none of the distribution centers or the actual game stores had the finances to purchase this game to put on shelves while it came out. So there was this huge lack of the market when it came out. And it sold probably around like, you know, maybe 300,000 units whenever it did launch.
Yeah, VG Charts says about 400,000.
Yeah, it
like
was
to
bad.
Date 400,000.
Yeah, and that's like crazy when you consider the budget that they probably gave for this game. And so they was seen as a massive failure. And ultimately, they, you know, Capcom saw it and they like pulled the plug, even though they had all of this juice kind of gassed up with CyberConnect ready to roll out. And they were like, nope, we're not doing it.
Yeah. It's a shame. It sounds like a lot of weird factors like going against them at the time too. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is also just like a weird niche game that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I kind of, I don't know. I'm not sure that like the second game would perform better than the first game just because of how weird and niche it is as a thing, you know, a playable anime full of QTEs, you know, I'm sure if you read reviews, like, they probably talked about, you know, the combat and stuff is not very fun, you know, but also we have this like super weird story that if it ended at the end of the base game would be like a really anticlimactic cliffhanger.
Very much.
Way for it to end.
For sure.
So yeah, you know, it would be cool to continue to see them like tell the story, I guess, in a sequel, but I think as we got it as a DLC, despite like the way they sold the DLC separately, unavailable for purchase now, I am very salty about that. I would have bought it, or like they never sold, as far as I know, they never sold like a physical collection that had the DLC on the disc, like a Game of the Year edition or something like that. So anyway, it's a fun game. I'm glad we got a chance to go through it. Especially some of these moments in the spoiler section are very fun to relive. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys for coming on here and doing this with me.
It's been a blast. Thank you very much for having us on. Look, anytime you want to talk about Hindu gods beating the hell out of giant monsters and monkeys and elephants and each other, more importantly than not, give us a call.
You say that in a way that makes you think that this is going to be the last time, but something's going to come up. You know it will.
Something will. We got
Journey to the West. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again, Dave. This has been a blast and always a pleasure to come on Tales from the Backlog. And I'm excited we got to play this game. I can't wait to move on to more weird Capcom properties.
This is one of the cool things. Even today, Capcom's still doing some weird stuff. Stuff like Kunitsugami that came out, I think, last year, looks super cool and off the wall. So one of the cool things about them, they're big enough and their main series are doing well enough that I think they're able to fund some of those other cool little creative swings. So yeah. Well, thank you guys again. It's always a pleasure having you here. It's always just generally good to talk with you, and no matter the context. Whether it's podcasting or the times we've been lucky to meet up in person, it's always a good time. So thank you again. Thank you everyone who's listened to the end. We appreciate you. A reminder to check down in the show notes for everything Friday Night Gamecast. You can check out the show. You can follow them on socials and all that good stuff. And you're my hero if you've made it this long. Be sure to tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.
Listen to Flashback 64, the chronological Nintendo 64 podcast. Hosts Gooey, McKenna, and friends flashback to the 90s and early 2000s with a look at the Nintendo 64's catalog and its contemporary cultural and historical context. Starting with the console's launch titles and proceeding in release order, we discuss classics like GoldenEye, Super Mario 64, and Star Fox 64, as well as some not-so-beloved games, lesser-known titles, and everything in between. Along with game-specific deep dives, we also cover other bits of pop culture from the time, like films, music, and more. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too, until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
and Jacob McCoy.
With many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers and happy gaming.